right, so we start with Clapton, who is one of my favorite guitarists of all time. So I was very happy to start with Eric Clapton. And we're clearly going for that Cream era vibe. So that slightly warmer, that woman tone that is, often documented from his time in Cream. So I picked up one of the SGs that we've got in the office, because that's obviously the guitar that he created the woman tone with. And from the pickups point of view, we're very much using the pickup by the bridge. And when we're setting up the kind of volume and tone knobs, we're very much rolling the tone all the way off. So we end up with this kind of rich, creamy kind of sound, which is quite unique to Clapton in that era. So that's it for the guitar. When it comes to the pedals and the amp, the first thing to say is that the amp throughout all of these players is exactly the same. We're using just a clean amp, so you can use like a Fender or matchless. We're using like a Kemper, so we're using a matchless style amp through the Kemper. And on top of that, we're making everything else happen with these really cool pedals. So we're using the Amplitude X drive on the Blue 3 setting, basically, to get this. And I've dialed the drive all the way up. It's right up there. And that Blue 3 is very much like a kind of blues driver, like a Marshall style tone. And when you've got that on, it goes from, if I turn it off for a second, it goes from this, which is clean through the amp, to this. So you can see it really is that pedal that's doing all the work when it comes to that sound, as well as your fingers, of course. Now, talking about fingers, let's just go through this lick. So it sounds like this. Okay, so I'm not going to go through it in great detail, just very simply. We're basically using the A minor pentatonic box 2 and 1. So we're starting in box 2 with this awesome little slide. Okay, and from there, we're going to be going like this. Okay. So this is that kind of classic movement between the box 2 and box 1. We talk about this loads in the Clapton course, so go ahead and look at that. So we're going up, so from 7 to 9. Up into box 2, back down into box 1, and then, kind of working around that kind of root note there, all right? Then, after that, we do this really cool throwaway classic Clapton sound, which is just such a simple thing, but to do it well is quite hard. So we're just doing pull-offs, hammer-ons and pull-offs. So we're hammering on from the 5 to the 7 on the G string, down to the root notes, and then doing that bluesy curl to finish this off. So all together, nice and slowly, you get this. 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3. So one thing to say here, guys, is I'm not going to go through great detail all these licks. There's 5 licks to go through, so it'll be a massively long video. Instead, make sure you head on over to the link in the description where you can see the full tab and the full write-up of this lesson. All right, so next up we've got B.B. King, another personal favorite of mine, absolutely obsessed with his work. If there's one album I'd suggest getting, is B.B. King Live at the Regal. It's the best live album of any blues player ever. Anyway, let's talk about the tone, how we got this sound. So first up, I switched to my 339, so the Gibson 339. B.B. King very famously played Lucille, which is the kind of, again, a semi-hollow Gibson style guitar. So this is the closest that I've got to that. It does the job. It sounds really sweet. There's not really much going on. I'm very much using the neck pickup here. Volume's all the way up, and I do roll the tone down a little bit because, again, B.B. King tends to like that kind of slightly more bass-heavy vibe to the kind of warmer vibe again, shall we say. So that's it. And the cool thing here is we're going through that same amp that we did with the Clapton one, and I'm not using a single pedal. Look at this pedal board. It's so sad. Nothing gets used at all on this. Because B.B. King, he plays clean. If he's ever any drive, then it's just coming from the amp. So there's really not much you need to set up. It's all in the fingers, guys. So getting into the lick itself, and as I said before, I'll just walk you through it basically. We've got the full B.B. King player study. We've got the link to the kind of the tab of this particular lick as well. So we've got it all for you, but I'll just go through this basically anyway. I very much like to use the major sound of the pentatonic when it comes to B.B. King. So typically what I will do is I will find the A dominant 7 chord in the C shape, and that takes me to the kind of major pentatonic box 4. Okay. And in this instance as well, the really cool thing is that we're actually playing over the 4 chord, which is the D. So you hear right at the beginning of this lick, we play that D. Okay, so he actually highlights the D. So you can use notes from that little arpeggio within your soloing, but then really we're using we're still using the A major pentatonic sound just over the 4 chord, which is just classic. Great way to do it. So we get this, which is really beautiful. We're just using that box 4. Try and visualize that going from the 5th back to the root. That's always a winner. And then you get this more manipulation of the notes. Okay. So check out the tab. Remember to check out the tab to get those notes in the right places. But fundamentally, if you did it without the bends, it would sound like this, which really doesn't work very well. It's very, very dull. If you start to manipulate the sounds a little bit more, so those little bends, the first one's a full tone, okay, the second one's a half tone, okay, and you can play around with that all you like. You know, that's very much the blues thing, to go through the kind of microtones in between. And that's it, that's the lick. So remember guys, that for every single one of these players that we're looking at in this video, we've got a full 20 lesson player study that you can dive into and properly learn how to play like these players. You'll find all the links below. All right, so now we're into the Joe Bonamassa territory, so everything gets a little bit more full on, shall we say. And I've very much picked a kind of quintessential Joe Bonamassa quick rundown because, let's be fair, that's what we all want to see. You know, he's an amazing blues player, but it blows my mind when he does stuff like that. So I've put it in here to really challenge you guys. So let's just talk about the tone. So obviously you can see I picked up a Les Paul style guitar. This one's from Vintage, and it's a cool sounding guitar. It's what we've got around, and it really does the job nicely. I'm going to be using because this is a fast, high gain kind of run, I'm very much going to be using the treble pickup, which is, of course, the bridge pickup, and I've got everything set to full, okay? So quite simple in terms of the settings on the guitar. Now, when it comes to the pedals, you can see there's a lot more kind of twinkling lights happening here than in the BB King. So first of all, we're using the X drive again from Amplitude, and I've got it on green 3, which is essentially, as you might have guessed, a kind of tube screamer. And again, with Joe Bonamassa, we're going through the same amp we did last time, but I've also got a little bit more gain on that amp as well. So with a combination of the amp being driven a little bit more, a clean amp being driven really nicely, as well as the tube screamer being driven pretty much to the max, you get that really nice. It's like a kind of honky, a little bit honky, but really rich and creamy again, and it's perfect for these kind of fast runs. To kind of add to that creaminess, I've also added a little bit of reverb, you can see on the, I call it Danverb, and a tiny little bit of delay, okay? So these are just tiny little elements. They're very, very subtle. If I just kind of take off the gain for a second and just play you the reverb and delays. So this is it without the reverb, just the delay. So just that little flutter, it just adds a kind of richness to it as you add the gain back in. And again, the reverb just again to soften it a little bit and make it feel like it's more in like a room. So they're very subtle delay and reverb effects that we add to that, not too much. And that's the sound. So let's talk about the actual lick itself. So this is a really cool one. I'm just going to do it nice and clean first. So we do start with this kind of aggressive thing. So all this is just doubling up. So we're just taking the pentatonic box 1, and we're just taking these 2 notes. So with this lick, we're going to be doing something that I've come to find out is called accelerando, which really does sound like a Harry Potter spell. But essentially it's the idea of kind of gradually increasing that speed until you get to that. So rather than just jumping into this like, that kind of thing, we work our way up to that. A little bit messy there, but that's the idea of accelerando. Accelerando. moving faster as we kind of go through it. So in terms of what's actually happening with the fingers, I'm just first of all doing this unison bend to create a bit of tension. So I'm just taking that 7th fret of the G and 5th fret of the B, and just deliberately creating a lot of kind of vibrato there to create some really nice tension. They should sound like the same note, but we actually want it to sound a little dissonant. And then I work my way up the scale, adding in at the kind of 2nd degree of the minor scale. So okay, that's that first bit. All right, and now just remember, if you do want the tab, you can check it out via the link below. You can see the full tab for this. And of course, in our player study for Joe Bonamassa, Dion goes into all of this in great detail. Now, as we hit this, that's where we start to really build the speed. And all we're then doing there is just a simple pentatonic sequence in 6s, I like to think of it as. So we kind of get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. Okay, now Bonamassa does them in 6s, in 5s, in 4s, whatever. It doesn't matter, as long as you get that kind of sequence of descending notes. And in this instance, the one thing that really makes it stand out is that really cool 2nd interval at the top. So we've got root, 2nd, flat, 3rd, that makes it stand out from just doing it with the pentatonic shape. You've probably done that exercise. You certainly have if you've done any of my guitar gym sessions. But we do it starting from that 2nd degree. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. Okay? And it's one of those things. It just needs to be run over and over again. I would do 2 types of practice when it comes to speed work like that. One is very clean and very precise, making sure your plectrum's doing all alternate picking, down, up, down, up, down, up. Keep very small, very precise movements and get it as accurate as possible. And then the second type of practice is just going for it, trying to do it as fast as you can, chucking on the gain, and seeing what you can kind of get away with, getting used to that movement of how it feels to move the right hand quickly, doing the down up strokes, and how literally it feels to move this hand as quickly as you can. And if you combine those 2 things, you will gradually get there with that speed. So have a bit of fun with that lick, guys. And now we've got a bit of Stevie Ray. Okay, so we're doing Stevie Ray now. And what good blues lesson of any kind is complete without talking about Stevie Ray in some context? Now, he's the Texas blues master. He's the guy that puts the feel, the aggression, the attack into this sound. And to get that sound, obviously, apart from what I'm doing with my fingers and my hands, I'm using a Strat, and this is a really cool Fender Mexican Strat. It's not as expensive as it looks, and it sounds amazing. And of course, I'm very much using the neck pickup to get this particular sound, and everything is on full. So there's nothing fancy I need to do with the pickup selector or the tone controls or anything like that. It's all on full. And then with regards to the pedals, once again, I'm going through the same amp, so a clean kind of Fender matchless, whatever style amp. It's got a little bit of, the volume is up a little bit, because of course Stevie Ray would like it loud, right? And then I'm using a tube screamer, fundamentally. So I'm using this Amplitude X drive pedal on this A setting here under green 1, which basically means it's a tube screamer and it's not got too much happening on the drive, okay? So the drive is actually turned down, so it's not totally saturated, it just gives us a nice, if I turn that off, you got very clean to, just gives it a little bit of edge, a little bit of a honk, which is what we want. And then on top of that, the only other thing is a very slight bit of reverb, just again to give it more of like a live feel, and that's it. Okay, so very simple. When it comes to blues players, generally, we're not having to do too much with pedals or anything like that. So let's actually go through the lick. It sounds like this. So I love this lick. It's classic Stevie Ray, and it's deliberately over the 5-4 chord. So in the case of A blues, we're going from an E to a D, and eventually down to the root root chord of A. So this is the 5 to the 4, and we're very much just mirroring, we're moving with those chords. So really, we're using our kind of E minor pentatonic over the E, and like a D minor pentatonic over the D, but at the same time, we're kind of using extra notes on top of that, color notes, flavor notes, okay? So we start with this. Okay, so we're really just kind of playing around with these notes, but I'm also adding in the second degree and the flat second, which is just kind of all isolated. It's a very dark sound, right? That's that note on top of the root of E. Pretty nasty. But of course, the way Stevie seems to use it gives it this kind of Texas edge. I don't know why. Because it's kind of just on, sorry, off, on, off, off, on, off. Okay, and then you play around with kind of just those basic pentatonic notes. And you do exactly the same thing over the D. The only difference there is that we then go down and hit the root of A, because of course that brings us back to A. So it's a slightly different approach. It's very much kind of working with the chord rather than just letting the chords happen underneath whilst we just jam in A. So it's a really cool idea, something you can throw on any position, 5 to 4, whatever key you're playing in. And just beware, these notes work when you kind of go through them quite quickly as passing notes, or you can call them out notes. They're quite commonly known as out notes. So you wouldn't want to kind of go, it's going to sound very dark, very dissonant, very minor, especially when on that second. But if you use them just as little passing notes around the pentatonic, then they're absolutely fine. They add that kind of extra bit of flavor. So I'll play it for you slow, but remember, if you want to actually go through the specific notes in detail, head on over to the link in the description below where you'll find the whole thing, the whole tab, nice and clearly for you. And of course, we've got that Stevie Ray Vaughan player study to dive into this stuff in greater detail. But here it is slow. Or something very close to that. Okay, so we're looking at the last lick, and this is a Freddie King lick. And this one's pretty fresh for me because I've recently just finished doing the Freddie King player study. And again, when it comes to the sound of Freddie King, much like B.B. King, there's not a huge amount going on. These were not big like pedal guys or anything like that. So again, you can see from pedal cam that there really is nothing happening here. In fact, all it is once again going from this kind of, this is a 339 style guitar, but again, Freddie King would just use probably a bigger body, semi-hollow style guitar, right? But this is what we have here, so it'll do the job. And we're going into a clean amp, but this time I've just driven it a little bit more. So typically, if you had the luxury of playing very, very loud, it would just be like a good, clean tube amp that you just turn up. And the more you turn it up, the more drive you're gonna naturally get. That's kind of what we're emulating here through the Kemper, which is what it's going through. So, differently to the B.B. King sound, we've got this kind of sound. So it's just got a little bit more bite to it than where we had it with the B.B. King, where it was just turned down a little bit more, shall we say. So that's it with regards to the simplicity of the tone. The only other thing to mention is that I am using the bridge pickup instead of the neck pickup where I was with B.B. King, and it's all just tone is up to 10, essentially. And that's giving me that kind of biting, Texas bluesy edge that I'm kind of looking for. So let's talk about the lick here. So here, it sounds like this, first of all. All right, so Freddie King is all about style. It's all about the way you hit the notes, not the notes that you play. So it's that aggression, that attack that we want to try and get in. And of course, when you just have one lick to do it in, it's quite hard, but I think this is a pretty good job. So again, we're very much switching between the major and the minor pentatonic here. So I'm using my C shape chord to find that pentatonic box 4, just like we did with the B.B. King. And it starts exactly the same. Okay, so going up to that root note in that box 4, but then we kind of do it a little bit differently. So we get more aggression. So I love this because it's a major sound, but we're trying to kind of approach it as if it was a minor sound, you know, so we're getting hard hitting with the right hand. If you've never seen Freddie King, he doesn't really use a plectrum, he uses finger picks. So it's all very like, it will look like this. Which I find very hard to do, but it's all that aggressive kind of upstroking like that. So you could do it like that with the plectrum, for example. Now, all I'm doing there is I'm simply going, basically. Okay, so doing somewhere in between a half bend and a full bend. I like to keep this quite loose, quite open, up to, you know, how you like it, essentially. Okay, and then I'm switching very much to the kind of minor pentatonic box 2. Okay, to do this. Up. And this I go through in so much detail in the Freddie King course because it's just a great Freddie King style bend. But basically we're going up and down very quickly and then going up very slowly. So you can hear that first bend is only going up basically like a semitone-ish. And then we're going down very, very quickly. And then slowly coming up. Such a cool sound. Quite a hard one to get under your fingers, but it's a cool sound. And then I'm just going from the minor third to the major third and finishing on the root note. So all together, that lick sounds like this. So that was fun. I enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed that. I've had fun basically messing around with 5 different guitars and pedals all day long recording this. So I hope you find that enjoyable. And remember, if you are a blues fan like me and you just love the blues, you want to get into it way more, then you can start our Blues Essentials course right here on YouTube. I'll link to it literally in this video. So if you're like, do you know what? I really want a bit of time now to tuck into the blues, to understand it a little bit more, so that I can actually go through these player studies that I'm talking about and really get to grips with them. You can start that right here on YouTube today.